We got 6 teams on bye. We got injuries everywhere. You might need to dig deep and start some players that make you a little bit uncomfortable. But don't worry, I got you covered. Here are some players I think you can consider starting in week 6 if you need to. Hey, before I get to those players, if you haven't tried Underdog Fantasy yet, now is a great time because they have a ton of great stuff for new customers. Number 1, they're giving every new customer a 100% deposit bonus up to $500. That means any amount you deposit for the first time up to $500, they are going to match it. And you can take that money and use it right away. That is free money from Underdog Fantasy. But number 2, they're also going to give you this great Lamar Jackson new customer special on Sunday. All he has to do is go higher than half a yard. You pair that with any other line on Underdog, and you can triple your entry right away your first time playing. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com, use promo code ENDGAME, get access to that deposit bonus, take the money they give you, put it on the Lamar Jackson new customer special, and triple your entry just like that. Let's start at running back with Latavius Murray. We saw last week after Damian Harris went out, he pretty much clearly was the number 2 guy behind James Cook, and it was close to a 50-50 split here. He played a season-high 40% of snaps, and he also had 12 carries, which was only 2 less than James Cook had last week. There's a very good chance Damian Harris is out again this week, and the Patriots started off as a great defense this year, but they're absolutely decimated. Over the last 3 games, they're allowing 114 yards per game and 5 touchdowns to running backs. We know Latavius Murray will get the goal line work if they get close. He's getting enough work, even without that goal line work now, to at least be a viable starting option this week. If you're desperate at running back, which a lot of us are, I think Latavius Murray can come through. I also think Jaleel McLaughlin could come through. He also had a season high in snaps last week in week 6 at 40%, and surprisingly, that was more than any other running back. That's right, he outsnapped even Javonte Williams last week. And this wasn't a blowout. Even though you think, oh, Chiefs, it wasn't a blowout. It was a close game. They were in this game. He was out there in crucial situations. And we've seen it this year. This is a guy who doesn't need a ton of touches. He's got the ability at any point to have a big play, score a touchdown. He's also involved in the passing game, and he gets a great matchup this week against the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay is currently allowing the 10th most fantasy points to running backs and the 5th most yards per game. I think we see a nice Jaleel McLaughlin game this week. I think he's got upside because of what he can do, how he can score touchdowns. So again, if you're desperate and you're looking for upside, look at Jaleel McLaughlin in week 7. Let's go on to wide receiver, and we've been talking about Rashee Rice for weeks now, either A, in the Beat the Breakout telling you to pick him up, or B, even telling you in these videos to start him if you need to in deeper leagues. But I think Rashee Rice is getting closer and closer to being a guy you could consider starting even in shallower leagues. He played 50% of the snaps last week and ran 40% of the routes, which are both new highs for him this season. And despite the fact that he's had limited playing time this year, he is actually tied for 6th among all wide receivers in red zone targets. So he's a threat when they get near the goal line. And Justin Watson, who was one of their leading receivers in terms of snaps and routes run, will likely miss this game with a wrist injury, which means we could see more Rashee Rice. And it doesn't hurt that they get the Los Angeles Chargers, who give up the 4th most points to wide receivers on the season. And really, who is he competing with here? Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Sky Moore, who doesn't look like he'll do it, and don't even try to talk to me about McCall Hardman, who they just retraded for. Look, Rashee Rice isn't the safest guy because he's not out there all the time getting a ton of targets, but when he is on the field, he does get targeted at a pretty high rate, and this is a guy, when you get the ball in his hands, he's got the speed to make things happen. In this matchup, I think he can do it. I think he has touchdown upside. Another guy I'm starting even in 12-team leagues where I need a flex play. And now wide receiver, maybe not as exciting as a name as Rashee Rice, but Wan'Dale Robinson seems to kind of be the number 2 guy now, at least with Tyrod Taylor. Even though he saw his snaps go down a little bit, he had 8 targets and 8 catches, which were both season highs for him. So if Tyrod Taylor does get the start again, which it's leaning like it might be Tyrod Taylor again, Daniel Jones with that neck injury, Wan'Dale Robinson makes a good play. Now the issue here that caps his upside is the yardage. He only averaged 7 yards per reception. That is not good. There's not a lot of upside there. And we can't bank on touchdowns either because this offense doesn't score touchdowns apparently. But if you're looking for a pretty safe floor play in PPR leagues, Wan'Dale Robinson can do that for you. And he gets a great matchup against the Washington Commanders, who are allowing the most fantasy points to wide receivers right now. So no, he's not super exciting. He doesn't have a ton of upside. But if you just want a guy in PPR leagues who shouldn't kill you, Wan'Dale Robinson can be that guy. All right, let's go on to QB, and if you're looking for a streamer, I really like Sam Howell this week. I recommended him a couple weeks ago when they played the Broncos. I like him again this week against the Giants. It might surprise you to learn that Sam Howell has scored at least 16 points in all but one game this year, and he's finished as a top 14 quarterback in all but one game. Not to mention, he's been a top 10 quarterback twice this year. Sure, maybe he hasn't been great in real life, but for fantasy, he's been pretty good. And you look on paper, you see the Giants, you might think, well, they just did a pretty good job against Josh Allen, and you're right. And this isn't like a smash matchup or anything, but it's a good enough matchup that I'm not worried about it, especially when we're talking about streaming QB. And look, Sam Howell will run a little bit too. He could always rush in a touchdown. He's got weapons in this offense, and he's got a good defense, which means they're going to have the ball for most of the game here. So I think Sam Howell can come through at least a top 15 QB this week, if not better. So if you're looking for a streaming option, look for Sam Howell. Now, the last time I recommended Baker Mayfield, it did not go so well, but I'm going to recommend Baker Mayfield again this week because really there's just not a lot of great streaming options out there this week with so many teams on bye and the quarterback situation being what it is with injuries and things. But I think Baker Mayfield bounces back from a poor showing last week. The Lions are legit one of the best defenses in the NFL this year against the run and the pass, and they showed that last week against Baker Mayfield. But now he gets the Atlanta Falcons at home. And look, the Falcons aren't a pushover, but they're still in the bottom half in terms of fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. And Baker Mayfield is chucking it. He's thrown it at least 32 times in all but one game. I think he throws it well over 30 times in this game again, pretty much because they can't run the ball. They have to throw the ball. They have no other way to move the football. He's got Evans. He's got Godwin. This is another guy who uses his legs. He can run. He can run in a touchdown. I don't like him as much as Sam Howell. There's always bust potential with Baker Mayfield. But I'm going to go back to the well, and I'm going to say, if you're in a deeper league, Sam Howell is gone, and you need a streamer, Baker Mayfield can come through. Now for something I did not think I'd be saying, I'm going to suggest 2 rookie tight ends as tight end streamers this week. And let's start with Luke Musgrave. I really like Luke Musgrave. I think Luke Musgrave can have a very good week at the tight end position. One of my favorite streamers. Before the Packers went on their bye, he had played 70% of the snaps, tied Christian Watson for the team lead with 7 targets, and he had 6 catches in that game. And now he gets a Broncos defense that is arguably the worst defense in the NFL, but they're also the worst defense against tight ends. They allow the most fantasy points to tight ends. I think we see Luke Musgrave get involved here. Remember, he was coming on before he got concussed in that week 4 game, and then he rebounded right back from it in week 5, picked up right where he left off. Coming out of the bye, we see that post-bye rookie bump. I think we see Musgrave get even more involved this week. He's not only one of my favorite streaming tight ends this week, he's one of my favorite tight ends, period, this week. Then if you need to go a little bit deeper, how about rookie Michael Mayer has steadily seen his playing time increase, and in week 6 really saw it increase, 81% of the snaps, which was a new season high. And he also had 6 catches on 6 targets and led this team in receiving. Now, I don't expect that to continue because, they've got this guy named Davante Adams here. But look, maybe Brian Hoyer, the backup coming in, is a good thing for Michael Mayer because unlike Jimmy G, who basically only threw the ball to Davante Adams and Jacoby Myers, Brian Hoyer spread it out a little more. It doesn't sound like Jimmy G has got any chance of playing this week. It sounds like we're going to see Brian Hoyer again. And that could be good for Michael Mayer, who's only going to continue to see more and more playing time. And it doesn't hurt that he's playing the Chicago Bears this week, who are allowing the 11th most fantasy points to tight ends. Look, he's still available in 75% of fantasy leagues. So if you're looking at guys like, Zach Ertz, Logan Thomas, guys like that, just go grab Michael Mayer. I think he's better than them this week. Those are some sneaky starts for week 7, but you also need to know who to start, who to sit, who could boom, who you should grab off waiver wires before they break out. We got you covered with our week 7 playlist right here.